We'll just activate our mics.
Wow.
Oh, hey, we need to move that camera.
Oh, this camera. Oh, I thought it was. Oh, there it is. Okay. Excuse me. I got a little dust in my throat, I think. Ah. Oh, hey, there we go. That activated
Why is
our
it picking
mics.
us up?
It's hanging.
The hanging mic seems wrong.
No.
That's fine.
What
Hear
is
me
it?
saying, why is that working?
Wait a minute, that was you coughing.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Oh. Yeah.
Hanging mic 1 and 2 are on.
See what you're saying, hanging mic one.
But they're muted.
I guess last Wednesday we had a lot of echoing going on when people were up there because the mic, because we were home and the mic, when they were at the table, the other things were on too when they were doing their prayers and stuff.
How's it getting to you? Why is someone like... Wednesday class music.
Oh, hey, Mr. Chop is.
Okay. We'll be down there eventually.
They're having a little trouble.
If you want, I can turn this on.
Yes.
Well, yeah, I mean, put it back.
You have the little,
Put it back on the
caption
open
that
screen.
says, please stand by.
Well, I just do that to get rid of everything.
But that's not doing it. I get
That's
that.
not mine. Well, you didn't need everything. Thank you for agreeing to play.
So something is not wired in.
You just changed any of the metrics.
I did have it mic. I did.
Because I'm watching it.
I don't know what to do with this. And I don't know how to turn those off because that's going to affect the sound for the whole mic. And it didn't change it when you. I mean, they're
That
muted.
just shows you
They're
the
muted.
setting for the second. I know, I can't do that. I can't understand it. It's interesting. Yeah, this is getting...
Well, I don't know. We'll figure it out. We won't worry about it. I'll say, I'll just make an announcement. Is anybody watching on it? Or do we have anybody on? Did you get the live?
I did. We have 3 on YouTube so far.
Okay.
Watching our hello.
You and me, we're 2 of them.
I never clicked it. Well,
Hello, fellas. You're gonna have to have no pulse at all. Don't ever look at that wall. Don't mind my abilities. Okay.
My side's a lot fuller than yours.
Let me, so we had some technical difficulties up in the booth. I know we have that often, but if the audio is weird tonight, I think we got it fixed so it'll work. But if you're watching online and the audio is weird, we apologize. We had to bypass some things. So anyway, I think we got it working, but maybe we didn't. We won't know until somebody tells us. And so, as we begin tonight, some announcements. There will be a holiday party December 6th here at the building at 6 o'clock. Bring finger foods to share and enjoy a time of fellowship and some games and such. There is a new contribution box at the back. We had kind of a temporary one it was a long time we had that temporary one, and then Lee Klein fixed a more permanent one for us. Thank you for that, Lee. And then we've got men's breakfast on the morning of December 6th as well. And then the holiday schedule for service times is in the bulletin for, we'll have a regular service this Sunday, not our compact Sunday for fifth Sunday that we normally have, just regular service times in the morning and evening. And then devotionals on December 24th and December 31st. So, any announcements we need to make tonight that I've missed? This time we'll have our song.
895. I'd like to stay here longer than in the lot of days and watch the fleeting changes of life's uneven ways. But if my Savior calls me to that sweet home on high, I'll live with Him forever in glory by and by. Oh, yes, I'll live in glory by and by. I'll tell the seamless story there on high, there with my dear Redeemer. More to die. Oh, yes, I'll live in glory by and by. I want to be of service along this pilgrim way and lead the lost to Jesus as fervently I pray. As day by day I travel, I'll keep Him ever nigh and live with Him forever in glory by and by. Oh, yes, I'll live in glory by and by. I'll tell the sealed story there on high, there with my dear Redeemer, no more to die. Oh, yes, I'll live in glory by and by. In I go leaving, by faith I look away to yonder most eternal, the land of endless day. I'll cling to Him forever and look beyond the sky and live with Him forever in glory by and by. Oh, yes, I'll live in glory by and by. I'll tell the sealed story there on high, there with my dear Redeemer, no more to die. Oh, yes, I'll live in glory by and by.
Would you pray with me? Father in heaven, we are grateful to you for this day. We thank you for the opportunity that we have to be here tonight to fellowship with each other and to study from your word. Pray, Father, that you would be with us through our Bible study tonight and help us to learn from your word and help us to just ever grow ever more appreciative of the truth that you've given us in your word. Pray that you be with all those who are traveling to be with family over the holiday season. So many people on the roads right now, just keep them safe, especially with the potential for bad weather coming in this weekend. We just pray that your hand of blessing would be upon those who travel and that they would reach their destinations with safety. We pray that you be with those who are suffering illness right now, especially be with Lawrence and Marilyn Sand. We ask that you strengthen them and give them comfort in the days that are ahead for them. I pray all these things through your Son, Jesus. Amen. Unbeknownst to me. Okay, this is, all right. Well, good evening.
Good evening.
I was talking to you.
Good.
Good, okay. Wow, we got a lot of visitors tonight, and we're glad you are here. We are really glad you're here. And thank you. And we have been studying our way through the book of Judges, and we're in chapters 20 and 21. And if you're unfamiliar with Judges, there's some gruesome stuff that's going on right now. So if you could think of chapters that perhaps are less fitting for a Thanksgiving holiday, these might be the least well-fit chapters for a Thanksgiving holiday that you can think of. But we are studying God's Word, and for that I'm thankful. And there's things that we can learn from this study. And so it's not that we are in the habit of studying, gruesome things. That's not the topic of the class, but we are happen to be in this section tonight. And if not this week, then next week we'll finish up our study of Judges, and then we'll move on to a new study at the beginning of the year. So that's kind of where we're at. So we're glad you're here. Thanks for joining us. And this is it's not a happy study tonight. So that's just where we're at. We have been, like I said, studying our way through Judges, and in chapters 18 and 19, we read about a man who is from the area of Ephraim. Is he a Levite?
Just 19 is this guy.
Just 19. Oh, just 19 is this guy.
18
18 is the other Levite. So this Levite in chapters 19, 20, 21, he travels. His concubine leaves him and goes back home to her father, and he goes to fetch her, goes to bring her back home, and says, "Speak tenderly to her, and woo her back so that she will return with him." And on their way home, he stops. He with his concubine and his servant stop for the night in one of the cities of Benjamin, Gibeah, and they are treated poorly. And his concubine ends up being mistreated in very gruesome ways and ends up dying. And that's kind of where we left off last week, with her being gone. And then he takes her home and chops her up into pieces and sends her body parts out to all of Israel. Had to say that. I've never said that in a Bible class before, but so that's kind of where we're at, and that's the part of the story where we pick up with the aftermath of her death, and then him sending her pieces out to all of Israel to kind of stir everybody up and realize that there's some bad things going on in the nation that maybe need to be dealt with. So we're ready to pick up in chapter 20. Did we start chapter 20 last week? Did we read maybe just the first few verses and kind of...
I didn't think we started
Okay,
at all.
maybe we didn't. All right.
I can't recall.
I couldn't remember exactly where we stopped, but I knew we were ready at least for the start, if not a little bit into chapter 20. So here we are, chapter 20, verses 1 through 7.
Then all the sons of Israel from Dan to Beersheba, including the land of Gilead, came out, and the congregation assembled as one man to the Lord at Mizpah. The chiefs of all the people, even of all the tribes of Israel, took their stand in the assembly of the people of God, 400,000 foot soldiers who drew the sword. Now the sons of Benjamin heard that the sons of Israel had gone up to Mizpah. And the sons of Israel said, "Tell us, how did this wickedness take place?" So the Levite, the husband of the woman who was murdered, answered and said, "I came with my concubine to spend the night at Gibeah, which belongs to Benjamin. But the men of Gibeah rose up against me and surrounded the house at night because of me. They intended to kill me. Instead, they ravished my concubine so that she died. And I took hold of my concubine and cut her in pieces and sent her throughout the land of Israel's inheritance, for they have committed a lewd and disgraceful act in Israel. Behold, all you sons of Israel, give your advice and counsel here.
Okay, so, wow, what does it take to raise an army? Because, there's some foul things afoot here going on in Israel. Had he sent out a message saying, hey, here's what happened to my bride in Gibeah, and I want to tell you the story of what happened to her, would he have gotten the response that he got? Probably not.
Nope.
And so he does something that is just shocking, that is just gruesome, by sending out, literal body pieces to accentuate the gruesomeness of the act that has already taken place. He does something that is kind of over the top gruesome, just to get their attention. And it works. It works in a big way. They raise an army of 400,000 people. They show up to find out about this. So this is not, as we've talked about kind of time compression in Judges before over the stories that we read, this is not something that happens in a day. This is something that, I don't know how that works, where you send the pieces around, and then does it go to the county seat or something, and then they disseminate the news, and the armies gather in their local places, and then they all march on the place. So, we're talking probably at least a couple of weeks, if not months, of preparations taking place for this all to come about. So, and we're all aware of how things work, where you drum up excitement, or you drum up an emotional response, and the longer this drags on, sort of the bigger the story gets, right? The telling of the story over and over and over again about what has taken place makes it bigger and bigger and bigger. And so by the time they're there's 400,000 men not just coming to investigate what happened, but there's 400,000 men looking for a fight. They're looking to take care of business. And so what level of unrighteousness is acceptable within a nation? The fact that these things were taking place in Benjamin and happening already should have been repugnant in the sight of all the people, should have been something that the nation of Israel was ready and willing to deal with before it got to this point. But what was it about the fact that he chopped her up into pieces and sent her out that finally crossed the line to where now they're ready to act? And that's that's like a real question. How did they let it get to that point where they were accepting of the things that were going on in Benjamin, but now, because we've seen body parts, now we have to do something about it. And I'm not sure I have the answer to that, but they're ready to act. They're ready to do something about it.
Yeah, so one of the kind of things I noticed is it says, so all the sons of Israel from Dan to Beersheba. A couple chapters ago we saw when Dan was actually established, and that's kind of the northernmost point, and Beersheba is kind of the southernmost point. That's what it stands for, is this. That's all Israel. It's everybody. This isn't like, well, we got this limited group of people. That's not what's being said here. Dan to Beersheba is a phrase that means everybody in Israel. Everybody heard about it. So on the one hand, we can kind of question why they were so willing to tolerate the action that was going on, and then when this kind of dramatic event takes place where he cuts up the body parts and sends them throughout Israel, then they respond. I will say it's kind of reminiscent of the way prophets kind of had, they would do some extreme things that God told them to do. There's a difference that would get the attention of people better than just saying, hey, you shouldn't do that. Hey, we should do this. So there's perhaps a little bit of why he would do it. If he knew the stories of some of the extreme things God has done in the past, that would probably lead him to think that this was a great idea. But the news got sent out everywhere. Everybody heard about it, and like Jason said, they've already shown up ready to fight. So when they come and ask him in verse 3, tell us, how did this wickedness take place? Do they not already know the answer? This is kind of a formality that they're going through here. It's not like the guys who were sent with the body parts. They were like, hey, why do you have that that half of an arm or that leg or whatever on that you're carrying around with you to show everybody. Oh, I don't know. You have to go talk to this guy to find out. That's not what happened. They know what happened. They are already aware of this, and this is kind of a formality. They get to hear it from the source, and then they get to go do what they already showed up to do. There's no, I think if he had said, well, I'm actually over it, we don't need to worry about it. Are they going home now? I don't think so. I don't think that's what's happening here. The people are finally outraged enough. He kind of has successfully drummed up a mob out of all Israel in order to get revenge on Gibeah specifically, but the Benjamites in general. Chuck.
We know this all stemmed from, the fact that they've been overlooking this stuff all along is the fact that, as it's stated, I don't know how many times there's no king in Israel.
Right.
That everybody done what they thought was, everybody done basically what they wanted to. And that's why there hasn't anything been done about that, because nobody cared.
Yeah,
Nothing rose to the level of making them care.
Right.
It reminds me of the city that was near Sidonia. I can't remember the name, Laish, that the Danites took and renamed Dan. Said there was no king to humiliate them, is the term it's used. There's no king to put them to shame when they do anything wrong. There's no one whose job it is, where there's no one you can go past me who I can kind of pass the responsibility on to say, well, this person should really take care of it. And that's, the people of Israel have certainly been doing that, at least. Yeah, there's no guy at the top who says, okay, if no one else has done it, now I have to do it, right? For sure. They've been overlooking way too much.
Yeah.
The Levite, it's kind of interesting, in verse 8, they have committed a lewd and disgraceful act in Israel, in verse 6, of this chapter. The land of Israel's inheritance, he's kind of referring to Israel as a special nation, right? Israelites always did and have. And he's doing that like they're a people following after God, and he's discovered this evil thing, and it's just so foreign to the concept of what goes on in Israel, so that he's calling everyone together. And if you just read those two verses, it would sound really good. But if you look back in the last chapter, 19, verse 25, so the man seized his concubine and brought her out to them. He's the one that sent her out there to get killed. So he wants to act like Israel's this special nation, and we shouldn't be falling to these kind of things, and we should be better than this. But who kicked her out there, man? You're the one that did it. So there's kind of he should be correct in his appeal, but he's obviously not, and he himself knows that, certainly.
We talked about in chapters 18 and 19 with the last story, there's no hero in that story. It's all bad guys against bad guys. And as much as we're used to seeing, and I think we typically do have kind of a pitting of right versus wrong in most Bible stories, and we find a hero in the story, even if it's an imperfect hero. It's hard to find a hero in this story too. You want the Levite to be a hero. You want him to be the one that's defending what is right. But I think we find too many holes in his motives. I think we find too many holes in the complete telling of the story for him to be just elevated as being the good guy in the story. And somebody might disagree with that and say, no, here's all the good things that he does, because he does call on God, and he does say some right things, but he doesn't do them consistently. And there are too many big decisions made without reference to God throughout this story for me to feel like that he is just righteous all the way through it, because they do call on God a couple of times as we move through the story, but we haven't heard that yet, unless I'm mistaken. But he's kind of raised this army, seemingly for a personal vendetta almost against the people of Benjamin, but willing to use the idea of right versus wrong as the impetus for raising that army. But he fails to mention what he did. He fails to mention his own culpability in it, or his own mistakes that he made along the way that we talked about last week with his negligence and his poor judgment in the steps leading up to the things that happened. And so I have a hard time thinking of him as being the hero of this story. I think both of these stories, the previous one and this one, are here to illustrate that the state of Israel under the condition of there is no king in Israel, and there's nobody deciding for the people what is right and wrong. And it also happens, remember how Judges starts with the death of Joshua and what happens shortly after the death of Joshua, but a generation arises that had no knowledge of God. And where are we in our timeline with these two stories? But probably right there at that if not within the heart of the downfall of Israel after the death of Joshua, it's very, very close to it. And these may be the events that are leading to that very thing of that downfall of a generation that didn't know God, because this is early in the history of the nation. So there's the stories are here for a reason. They're here for us to learn from. They're here for us to gain from. But they're not nice stories. But we can still learn from them. Okay. Anything to add, Johnny?
Where in this timeline do you think prophets started?
Well, I mean, prophets there were prophets, Moses was a prophet. I think you can go back and make the case that even some of the patriarchs were prophets because they had that direct connection to God, but not, maybe they didn't fill the office of prophet the way that we think of like Isaiah or Jeremiah. Those seem to be a later addition by God, more during the monarch period to try to draw the nation back. But I think, and we talked about this a little bit last week too, that just because we see these bad things happening doesn't mean that there weren't faithful people somewhere. There were pockets of faithful people throughout the nation. I'm fully convinced of that. We see that in the story of Elijah in 1 Kings 18 and 19 where he thinks he's the only one left, but God says there's 7,000 that you don't know about. And I think we would be foolish to assume that there weren't always pockets of people here and there that were committed to being faithful to God. And so where did the prophets come into that? I think there were people filling that role sporadically throughout, but they become more formalized as we get later into the nation's history, would be the way I read that. Bill, do you have a comment?
Now, I'm not sure about the culture, why they did what they did, but this parallels Sodom and Gomorrah.
For sure, yeah. We talked about that last week, absolutely, yeah. That the parallels to Genesis, I think it's Genesis 19, is that where Sodom is, where we brought that up last week with especially the part where they're in the square and they have a stranger come to them that they don't know that invites them into his home, and he tries to take responsibility for him to get them off the street. And so we talked about that as a Levite. Shouldn't he have known that story? And rather than offering his concubine in their place, shouldn't he have been calling on the God that delivered the men in the first story? Because had he called on God for deliverance rather than acquiescing to the crowd and giving them his concubine, maybe things would have turned out differently. We can't. That's pure speculation, but it's worth thinking about. That did he know that story, and did he react to the crowd the way that he should have? And it's hard to defend his actions as he reacted to the crowd. I'll just leave that there. But Greg.
This is fairly early, though, because if I'm interpreting it correct, later in verse 28 talks about Phineas.
Yes.
Was ministering at that time, so that's just 3 generations down from
Right.
Aaron, Eleazar, and Phineas. So.
Right, the grandson and we had the Levite in one of the last stories. The Levite was a grandson of Moses, was the grandson of Moses. So we have that connection of being right in the timeline of the generation. We have Joshua's generation that was faithful, and then the next generation arose that didn't know God, and so that puts us right in that timeline where bad things started to happen. And these are, I have to think that these stand as representative. These aren't the 2 bad things that happened that caused the nation to go downhill. These 2 things are representative of the bad things that were happening. One that represents the spiritual decay with the idolatry in chapters 18 and 19, and then one that represents the moral decay of 19 through 21. So the downfall of Israel is complete. It's not just spiritual decay. It's not just moral decay. It's both taking place at the same time. So yeah, I think you're exactly right.
The thing that stands out to me in this story, at least in this section, is accountability. You know, it's like these, obviously, as we've been talking, it seems like the other nations of Israel were okay with a little bit of it happening, or even a lot of it happening, but the reason they start to act, you know, how to raise, what does it take to raise the army, was this gruesome act of, you know, the whole getting body parts in the mail. And the thing to me that, you know, maybe brings it closer to home for us is what does accountability look like for us? Because for them, doing what's right in your own eyes means, you know, yes, I try to live rightly, but as Christians, we're called, you know, Matthew 18 and elsewhere, I mean, in Galatians 2, you know, Paul does this with Peter, but we're called to call a brother out. And I think that in one sense that doing what's right for us means that when we see a brother or sister that's going down the wrong path, we're called, and at the end of James, he says, you know, if you brought a brother back, you've saved him. And so, you know, I think I know this is a very gruesome and very far out there story, but a good take home for us is we need to be people that are looking out for and loving people and holding each other accountable and walking toward truth and righteousness and not letting things slide to where they get to this point.
You're right. I think that's a great application. I don't want to be so jaded or so. I don't want to be at a point in my own faith where it takes somebody sending me a body part to get my attention, right? I want to recognize sin for what it is way before that, and to be committed to eradicating that before it gets to the point that it got to in this story where we had to get their attention through gruesome means. And so, and we've talked about that before in Jeremiah. It says the people have forgotten how to blush. You know, they don't even recognize their sin as being sin until something like this happens, or I mean, it's a Romans chapter 1 scenario too, where they go so far away from God that finally God just delivers them over to their own sin. Yeah, we want to be shocked by small sins, you know, with the idea that, you know, I want to be just as disgusted by lying as I am by the things that are taking place in this story. I don't want to paint some sins as being, well, they're not that bad. They're all bad. Okay.
Ready?
I think we're ready.
We've only got like 35 more verses or something.
Yeah. We're close. We've done the first section. Maybe. There we go.
There we go. Then all the people arose as one man, saying, "Not one of us will go to his tent, nor will any of us return to his house. But now this is the thing which we will do to Gibeah. We will go up against it by lot. And we will take 10 men out of 100 throughout the tribes of Israel, and 100 out of 1,000, and 1,000 out of 10,000 to supply food for the people, that when they come to Gibeah of Benjamin, they may punish them for all the disgraceful acts that they have committed in Israel. Thus all the men of Israel were gathered against the city, united as one man."
Okay. So the question, why weren't they already unified? Why, I mean, why did it take this, and it kind of reiterates some of the things we've already talked about. Why does it take this to unify the nation against the sins that were taking place in Gibeah? Shouldn't they have already been united against sin? Shouldn't they have already been united in righteousness, in following the law? And so it's kind of an interesting thought there. And then the idea, is their anger righteous? Is it right for them to be angry about the things that have taken place in Gibeah? And I mean, I think we can say yes. I mean, I think unrighteousness should garner our anger. I think sin should make us feel a certain way. And so when we see those things blatantly taking place, not just out in society that we know as worldly, but within our own people, within our own fellowship or whatever, we should react to that. We should react to that with emotion. But then, are their actions righteous? And we have to be careful with that, because you know James says the righteous, the anger of man does not bring about the righteousness of God. So when we act in anger and we're acting in it based on our anger, sometimes we have to be careful about that we're not overstepping the bounds of that anger and doing things that are unrighteous in the name of righteous anger. So when we go back and review some of the things that they did, the vow that they take to obliterate the city, and the vow that they take that none of us will go home until until that has taken place. They're saying some very bold things. Are they making promises that they shouldn't make based on that anger? And I think that's where we have to be careful. And we're going to see that leading through this story as we get to the end, they're going to have a lot of unrighteous actions here. They're going to do some things that should not be done in the name of righteous anger, and that's a very dangerous thing for us. I think. I mean, have you watched the news lately? Do you get on Facebook at all? Do you see social media posts? Do you see people who have a legitimate concern about something, and then their reaction to that legitimate concern is completely over the top or completely out of left field, where it's like that doesn't even make sense. You're drawing a conclusion that's not based on the evidence that you presented. And I can say those things because I've never done that. I've never overreacted to anything. But and not that this is a complete overreaction, but we have to be careful that our anger doesn't drive us to do things that are unrighteous, and then to sit back and say, well, they had it coming, or I was justified in doing what I did because what they did was so much worse than what I did, or what they did was so bad that it garnered this reaction. We should be committed to righteousness first. So. Yes, Chuck.
It makes you wonder, when Moses, got the law, on the mountain, he got the law, that God set up all these things that they were to keep the law, and Moses delivered all this to the people and everything. They had not only that, not only did they have the temple, the things to do in the tabernacle, in front of the people, with the people, and all that. They had all the special circumstances of sacrifices and everything like that, and all the special things due to like a harvest and feast of booths and all that sort of thing, and it makes you wonder, what were they doing all this time? They had all this information, and what were they doing all this time? Did they just completely not do any of the sacrifices anymore? Didn't do any of the special feast and remembering all that sort of thing? It makes you wonder, what were they doing? What have they been doing? What is the priest who's supposed to be directing all this? What have they been doing?
Well, we see the failure of the priesthood in the last story. In this story, with Levites that are, of the priestly tribe. They may not have been priests; they might have been just Levites, but that are participating in immorality and in idolatry. And so there was a breakdown of not just of the people, but of the spiritual leaders of the nation. There was a breakdown all across the way. The leadership of the people had failed them. That's clear by what we read at the beginning of Judges when we read about Joshua's death, that there arose a generation that did not know God. That only happens because they weren't taught. And so many of those things were being left undone, or if they were being done, they were not being done in the way that they had been prescribed, and they're not for the purpose that they were prescribed. You go back to Deuteronomy 6, and you read about, Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God is one God, and you shall teach these things to your children, and they shall, as you walk by the way, and as you sit in the doorway, and as you get up, and I can't remember, I can't quote it, but it's all there.
I can.
You can. I know you can. You're a memorizer. And then later in that chapter, it also says, when your sons ask you about these things, that you're supposed to tell them these things. And so, they might have been doing some of those things, but not connecting it to the story, or not connecting it to the God that gave them the story. And so, sacrifices done by rote are no sacrifices at all. Sacrifices done that are just observed to check the box without having the emphasis behind it or the faith behind it is of no effect. And so, so if they were being done, they weren't being done properly. But many of them weren't being done. I think that's clear. Johnny?
We kind of, at least I do, kind of give people a little break back then because everybody didn't have a copy of God's Word at the time.
Right.
But just a generation ago, I read an article yesterday about this. Just a generation ago, when my generation was growing up, you expected every household in the United States to have a Bible. And that was just what you expected, and people did. And already, the last poll they took 5 years ago, 35% of the homes in the United States don't have a Bible in them anymore. So we're doing the same thing. We're letting God's Word not be spread.
Right.
And we've got it in our hands.
And we see the effects of that in our society the same way that it plays out in Judges. I mean, we see the loosening of morals. We see the declining spiritual emphasis in our nation, in our homes. So I think we see the effects of that the same way that they did. Yeah, I think you're right.
Now that the people have come together, it says all of Israel's gathered together, but who are they gathered against? Gathered against Benjamin.
One of the Israelite
One of
tribes.
the Israelite tribes. And later they say the descendants of our brother is who they call them. So they're gathered together against their own people. And it kind of goes hand in hand with my other question is who told them to do this? Who gathered them together against Benjamin?
A Levite.
The Levite did, but for his own purposes. God didn't gather them together here. God didn't set them on this mission to say, you guys have to go destroy Gibeah and punish Benjamin, and we'll see the punishment of Benjamin is dramatically severe. I mean, it's more severe than what any other sin is perhaps punished in Scripture.
Since Sodom.
So, yeah, I mean, and this is God's own people doing it to God's own people is what we're watching. But look at, the authority of this is kind of on one Levite. And when they came into this country, when they came into this land, their authority was from God through Joshua telling them, you will go and you will take the pagans out. Why hadn't they done this to all of the pagan people still living among them? They never drove them out like this. They never came together as a people. If they had a marching army, 400,000 strong, that will later see can march through Benjamin and destroy every single city they have, they could have cleared the land out. It was well within their power, demonstrably within their power to do it, and they never did it. But when they're up against their own, they would do it. But against the other people, it's like it wasn't personal enough. Their hearts weren't in it because they weren't following God, they were following their own desires.
Well, everybody always picks on the little brother.
He was the younger.
So, sorry, that was personal.
Sorry, youngest brother. We'll clarify, youngest brother.
The youngest brother, yeah, picking on Benjamin. All right, there's 12 to 17.
Then the tribes of Israel sent men through the entire tribe of Benjamin, saying, what is this wickedness that has taken place among you? Now then, deliver up the men, the worthless fellows in Gibeah, that we may put them to death and remove this wickedness from Israel. But the sons of Benjamin would not listen to the voice of their brothers, the sons of Israel. The sons of Benjamin gathered from the cities to Gibeah to go out to battle against the sons of Israel. From the cities on that day, the sons of Benjamin were numbered 26,000 men who draw the sword, besides the inhabitants of Gibeah, who were numbered 700 choice men. Out of all these people, 700 choice men were left-handed. Each one could sling a stone at a hair and not miss. Then the men of Israel, besides Benjamin, were numbered 400,000 men who draw the sword. All these were men of war.
Okay, so we have an attempt to exorcise the corruption from the nation. And it's interesting to me, I don't know if it's just kind of dawning on me here, that the 400,000 men in the army gathered together, specifically their vow in the first section is against Gibeah. They will be content to take out that city where the crime took place if Benjamin will join them. They want Benjamin to say, you condemn the things that are going on in your own nation, in your own tribe, and take care of it, and we'll support you in it because we we see that it's bad. But then we see Benjamin putting the tribe before the nation. And that one hits close to home too in our modern scenario where we live right now. I mean, just think about how often we see. When was the last time you saw a politician on either side saying, "Well, that guy on the other side had a really good idea, and he, that's a really nice thing that we ought to try because that's a good idea." That if you listen to one, and I'm not choosing sides. Anybody on one side, every single thing that the other side does is evil, and everybody on this side, every single thing on the other side is evil, and there's completely this idea of putting tribe before the good of the nation. And we're gonna take care of our own, and we're gonna let the other side. We're never gonna give the other side any credit or any help. So you see Israel coming willing to accept Benjamin. Benjamin is not the issue until they decide to put Gibeah ahead of everybody else, which is there's just an interesting application there for us that we need to be on the side of righteousness. Not just take sides with the people that look like us or that talk like us or that, that we've always been on their side before, so we have to stay on their side no matter what they do, because they're our people or whatever. We need to be on the side of righteousness, and had Benjamin chosen righteousness over Gibeah, then the rest of this story would have gone very differently.
Yeah, Benjamin's attitude here is obviously pretty poor. To say that they're complicit in Gibeah's crime is not at all an understatement.
Sure.
This isn't them saying, "Well, we don't think you guys should go destroy the whole city. At 400,000, that's a pretty big army for what happened. I don't think any of this is necessary." They weren't being diplomatic here. What was Benjamin's response? We got all our fighting men together. No, we're going to fight you on this one. We actually think that we're not going to do anything about it. We think we're not going to let you do anything about it. And we're going to get an army together that, frankly, mathematically doesn't have much of a chance here. Even though they're going to form together at the city, and perhaps they were using the walls of the city for defense and all that. That's just, it's not very feasible here, but they were willing to do it. So as far as, it being a personal matter, Benjamin, the whole tribe is viewing it as a personal matter. We see here they have 700 men who can throw a stone at a hair and not miss, right? Do we know anyone else who's good at throwing a stone? Who can stand up to the stones? Not Goliath, right?
Yeah.
And even though they're men of war, it wasn't like, when you watch a movie and everyone's got full armor on everywhere. That's not exactly what they had here, Metal was not like a super common thing. So we have the best fighters that Israel has, these stone throwers. They could turn the tide of a battle easily. That's pretty historically relevant, that ranged weaponry just lets you win more often. And they're being used against the sons of Israel. It's just, again, why, if you could get 26,000 men together and you're pretty sure you can take on 400,000, why were the nations not driven out yet? Why didn't you apply yourself following God instead of applying yourself trying to figure out how to get away from God's law? And that's what they're doing. Exodus 21 and Leviticus 24 both state that the death penalty is what happens when you murder somebody. That's the punishment for murder, death penalty. In Deuteronomy 22, for rape and adultery, murder. That's the death penalty. That's the punishment, is death. It's just, why are you going to bat for people who, by the law of the land that you live in, have earned death? And it's not to bat in like, well, let's find out if they actually did it. That's not even a question here. Why are you gathering all your people together to fight and die for them in that way when they willingly did this? They're not repentant of this in any way. Not like the city of Gibeah has kicked these men out, and when they showed up said, "Oh, we stoned them outside the city. I can show you where they are." That's not what happened. They're going up to bat for a bunch of unrepentant people, which is kind of shocking here. It's not how the people of Israel were supposed to act.
All right, next section, verses 18 through 23.
Now the sons of Israel arose, went up to Bethel, and inquired of God, and said, "Who shall go up first for us to battle against the sons of Benjamin?" Then the Lord said, "Judah shall go up first." The sons of Israel arose in the morning and camped against Gibeah. The men of Israel went out to battle against Benjamin, and the men of Israel arrayed for battle against them at Gibeah. Then the sons of Benjamin came out of Gibeah and fell to the ground on that day 22,000 men of Israel. But the people, the men of Israel, encouraged themselves and arrayed for battle again in the place where they had arrayed themselves the first day. The sons of Israel went up and wept before the Lord until evening, and inquired of the Lord, saying, Shall we again draw near for battle against the sons of my brother Benjamin? And the Lord said, Go up against him.
All right, so, yay, a map. So Benjamin is that little, whoops, wrong button. Whoops, wrong button. There we go. Benjamin's right there. Kind of one of the smaller tribes. Jerusalem is in Benjamin. Gibeah, well, that's a weird word. But Gibeah was right above Jerusalem. And so that's where the crimes took place. Bethel is spelled weird on that map, but it's right there. And so they're right on the border there of Ephraim, gathered to go against Benjamin. Down here, Bethlehem is that's where the concubine was from.
Yeah.
And so, all this is taking place right in the heart of Israel, right in the middle of this would be like happening in Kansas if it was in the United States. I mean, it's just happening in the heart of the nation. Chuck.
Now after all this has happened, now they go to inquire of the Lord.
Right.
It makes you wonder, the first battle there when when 22,000, it makes you wonder if God's doing a little punishment on them for how they're handling the situation.
Okay. Interesting take. So, yeah, the course of events here is the series of events it's an interesting breakdown of things. So they finally at this point ask of God, and by the way, what is at Bethel at this time? The ark is at Bethel. And Phinehas, the grandson of Aaron the high priest, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, is at Bethel tending to the ark. He is the high priest. So they finally inquire of God, and God says, "Yep, Judah, you lead the way. Go ahead and go into battle." And then it does not go well. Judah, they lose 22,000 men. That's almost the size of Benjamin. That's almost the size of the number of the tribe that Benjamin. That's Hays, Kansas, by the way. Hays, Kansas has a population of about 21,000 people. So I looked it up today because I wondered. So at a whole city of something that most of us have been to or at least driven through of that size is gone. And we see this. Disobedience is severely punished. But wait a minute, who are the disobedient ones here? Isn't it Benjamin? Isn't that who we're mad at? Isn't it Benjamin, the tribe that has done the evil deeds? So then why is Judah the one that's taking the brunt of this? So look back at Deuteronomy 28. We've talked about it before, the Mount Ebal, the blessings of Mount Ebal and the curses of Mount Gerizim, that Moses said, these are the things you're to read when you go into the promised land, and they did that in the book of Joshua. Once they had taken the land, or at least part of it, they gathered together on these mountains, and this was right in the area where some of the things with Gideon, a lot of his stuff was taking place. Gideon and Abimelech were taking place right there where Mount Gerizim and Mount Ebal were at. If you look back in Deuteronomy 28, verse 25 and 26, the Lord will cause you to be defeated before your enemies. You shall go out one way against them, but you shall flee 7 ways before them, and you shall be an example of terror to all the kingdoms of the earth. And your carcasses shall be food to all the birds of the sky and to the beasts of the earth, and there shall be no one to frighten them away. The Lord will smite you with the boils of Egypt. Or there you go, 25 and 26. So this is a punishment that takes place on the nation when they have been unfaithful. And what just happened? This is what the curse of Mount Gerizim is, what just happened to the nation of Israel. And so what does that tell us about how God views the nation? They've been unfaithful. They're not the good guys here. There really is a lack of good guys in this story. And guess what? It's about to happen again. And so we see God meting out punishment on evil people in this story. Benjamin's going to get theirs. It's coming. But their punishment is forestalled. Their punishment is delayed while someone else gets punished first. And it's an interesting turn of events. It's not what we expect to happen. If you're reading this story for the first time and you've never heard any of this, you expect Benjamin to get slaughtered. And it doesn't happen. Benjamin wins. And that is unthinkable.
And, and you think back, in Joshua's last days, you're going to follow the Lord.
Yeah.
Get rid of everything. Oh yeah, we're going to follow the Lord. We're going to do it.
Yeah.
We're going to do it. And Joshua, he says,
no, you're not.
No, you're not.
You won't do it.
And
Yep.
here they are.
Yep. A generation later, here they are. Yep.
Don, did you have something? Or is it-
I'm gonna wait and see if you say it later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ooh, all right. Now we got to say a bunch just to see if we happen to stumble across it. No.
You're all around it, but you haven't said it.
Okay.
So God meets Israel where they're at. They came together without God's command. They've already formed up. They've already decided what they're going to do. Here's how we're going to supply the army. Here's all this stuff. All right, now that we're going to do it, let's go ask God exactly how I should do this thing we didn't even ask him if we should do. Right? So they go and But God still meets them there, right? He still responds. He still gives them an instruction. Judah will go up first. And there's something here that's still a little bit comforting, that even if we're kind of up a creek of our own doing, God is still willing to come meet us there. He's still willing to come and start instructing us. And if we start listening, he'll still talk to us. He'll still respond to us in that way. He doesn't just throw us away and say he's done with us because of our own actions. Which is, I think, really good for us. I'm going to skip one. Judah has the first attempt here. That's the command he gives them. And if you go all the way back to Judges 1, it's, who shall go up first for us against the Canaanites to fight against them? Verse 2, Judah shall go up. Judah has, when their father, was giving all of the instructions to them, Judah was given the scepter. A scepter of rule is essentially what was given. And we see that ultimately fulfilled in Christ as he rules an eternal kingdom. But Judah was supposed to be kind of the kingmaker. They always had the first foot forward. And we know that when they went into the promised land, they didn't do what they were supposed to do. They didn't succeed. And we kind of already talked about this idea. Seems like God's punishing the kind we would call it the lesser of two evils, but he's punishing Israel before Benjamin. Benjamin can have theirs later, but Israel's going to get theirs now. And Judah is the first one. They were the first one who was supposed to go clear the promised land, and they didn't do it. And now they're the first ones to go up against Benjamin and get punished for having not succeeded, it seems. I can't think of another reason that they would be told to go up first, other than you were supposed to clear the land, and here you are trying to clear the land of your own brethren again. And they lose. And I think that's why. Even though they're following God's commands, they lose. And that can happen to us too. In not necessarily in this way, not because we're being punished necessarily, but there are times where we are supposed to go out and preach, or we're supposed to go teach, or we're supposed to be a witness for Christ, and we're supposed to do that. And even if we do it right, it doesn't pan out our way. It's like the parable of the sower. Sometimes we can go out and do the right thing, and we won't personally see any reward from it. It won't feel like we did anything at all at the end of the day. It'll feel like we just lost. We just wasted our time. Which sucks, but that's how it is.
I'll let you get to verse 28.
Okay, we got to go. Okay, we're going
he's giving us
to next section.
mercy round.
Next section.
I think that kind of answers the
All right.
questions you've been kind of all over.
Then the sons of Israel came against the sons of Benjamin the second day. Benjamin went out against them from Gibeah the second day and fell to the ground again. 18,000 men of the sons of Israel, all these drew the sword. Then all the sons of Israel and all the people went up and came to Bethel and wept. Thus they remained there before the Lord and fasted that day until evening. And they offered burnt offerings and peace offerings before the Lord. The sons of Israel inquired of the Lord, for the ark of the covenant of God was there in those days. And Phinehas the son of Eleazar, Aaron's son, stood before it to minister in those days, saying, Shall I yet again go out to battle against the sons of my brother Benjamin, or shall I cease? And the Lord said, Go up, for tomorrow I will deliver them into your hand.
All right. So sin has consequences. We're seeing that played out in this whole story, really, with the sins of Benjamin are being visited upon them, but the sins of Israel are being dealt with first because they went into battle a second time and they were defeated a second time. That's further confirmation that God has not been particularly happy with the whole nation up to this point. And then, obedience to God's word is required, but God's blessing should never be taken for granted. I mean, God tells them twice to go into battle, and twice they get slaughtered. So it's almost as if they go into battle thinking, well, we got God on our side, we can't lose, so we'll just whistle a merry tune and go into battle, and it'll all be okay because God sent us there. But just because they were physically following the acts that God had told them to do doesn't mean that they had placed their hearts where their hearts needed to be, and they shouldn't necessarily expect that that God's blessings were going to be there when their hearts weren't where they were supposed to be. Don.
Part of that verse, though, I think is the key. It says, the Lord said, go up, for tomorrow I will give them into your hand. He didn't say that before. He said, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go
Do it your
for
way. Yeah.
Do what you want to do.
Yeah.
And at this point, he says, I'll be with you.
Now, and I think you're right. I think we've seen in other cases, God demonstrating that the deliverance is going to be by His power. We saw that with Gideon with the weeding down of the army from really, an army of 33,000 against 180,000 or whatever it was. Was pretty bad odds to begin with. But then He weeded it down to 10,000 and then down to 300. And it's like God was like, okay, now you'll know the deliverance is from me. And so as you go into battle, day one and day two, and you get beat, and now I've told you that tomorrow we're going to win. You're going to win, and you'll know tomorrow that the deliverance is by my hand. I think that's a great point. And they had taken for granted the idea that, and we see this in other times as well under the Samuel. At the end, under Samuel, when the Philistines had attacked and they took the Ark of the Covenant into battle, thinking, oh, we got the Ark, we're going to go into battle, and the Philistines stole the Ark. They took it away from them because God was not going with them into that battle. And so just because they said they were going in God's name doesn't mean that God was going with them until God declares, I'm going with you.
You guys have said this already, but if you're being humble, you probably need to be humble.
A reason for it, yeah. And I think you're right. This is a humbling of Israel. Yeah.
This is again one of those kind of short, hopeful moments in this large tale that's pretty depressing overall. Is the second loss after they get sent out the second time and they lose again. They come back, and what do? Do they harden their hearts against God? Do they say, let's all go home, I want to be done? They ask God again, and they don't just ask God, they weep, and they're sad, and they're struck to the heart. I mean, this is very painful for them. And they offer up burnt offerings. They burn the whole animal as a pleasing aroma to the Lord. They offer peace offerings before God. Because before now, they've been doing it expecting that they're at peace with God. And are they at peace? Have they been at peace with God? There has been no peace. They haven't been pleasing God. They haven't been at peace with God, but now they're offering up the sacrifices that God has always wanted from them to do, and now they're finally doing it. And now when they ask of God, they don't say, who's going to go up next? They say, should we go up or should we cease? Should we be done? After they do all of that, now the question is, do we continue or not? Should we go home? And He says, yes, and now I will give them into your hand. So thinking they had God's blessing when they weren't at peace with God, when they weren't being pleasing to God, was just never going to work for them. It was a fool's errand is what they were on. And they took the punishment to heart, which is what we should do. But like Greg said, if we're being humbled, you need to be humble. And they were, and this is a short period of time where they do what they should do, exactly what they should do, I think.
Yeah.
Resemblance to what was going on with Samson too. You see Samson where, you know, at the very end with Delilah, you know, he's going through the motions of letting her do whatever she wants to do, and eventually, you know, God said, okay, enough's enough, I'm going to humble you. And then he's broken at the end, and he gives it all to God.
Right.
And so this is what's happening here.
Yeah. All right, we'll pick up with verse 29 next week. Maybe finish.
You know how long this chapter is? In the next chapter?
Try to finish. Thank you.